Welcome to another episode of Prepper Talk Radio. This is your radio for the ready-minded. I am Scott, and this is Shane, and we are here to razzle dazzle and dismay and anything else we can today.
Dismay is probably the bigger word of this topic. Sorry
100%.
to say.
Well, we're gonna jump into some stuff. We're gonna dive in headlong into Agenda 2030. Parts of it. We'll put it that way. Here's the thing, though. Paris isn't here tonight, and it was kind of a family emergency came up because planning was not coordinated across all levels, and this is like a perfect example of why do we prep? Well, the unexpected is more often an occurrence than it should be in daily living.
That's right,
and that's why we prep. Right? Some of us are prepping for the apocalypse also, but as you prepare for the simple things, the little things, the things that come along the way, all the little things that could really just wreck your day, wreck your week, wreck your month, wreck your year. By preparing for those, you really eliminate the bigger threats.
Yeah, it doesn't really have to wreck anything, right?
Yeah.
Like I've said a million times, I'll say it again. If a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound. If there's an emergency, but you're prepared, is it really an emergency? I don't think so.
If you look at the disruption of it, that's the thing. It's like, how disrupted did it get? That's why we prep, right? When I've said this so many times, it's like, sorry, broken record here, but when I've lost a job or a client didn't pay, then it's like, oh, that sucks. Well, food storage, right? It's what we're normally using. It's what we're normally doing. You have car insurance, so if your car breaks down, if your car gets smashed and totaled, it can be replaced and it's less of a disruption to you, right? A 90-day pantry, a 90-day storehouse is the same concept for your life. If you don't have it, any little thing can blow you over. The whole house can come down.
If you're just looking at it for the expecting the apocalypse, right, a big event, then you're less likely to do anything about it because it's less likely that event is ever going to occur. Mm-hmm. But like you're saying, Scott, just the small things in life necessitate being prepared. What we're going to talk about on our next episode after this is, and I say all the time, is look to the past to prepare for the future. That's how we don't have to look back very far. And just see how our parents and our grandparents and great grandparents lived. They were all preppers. I mean, they didn't call themselves such because that kind of lifestyle has gone away because of the on-demand lifestyle that we live now.
And we're going to dig into that a lot in our next episode too, which I'm excited for.
Yeah,
like the changing of the family, right? The dynamic shifts and what's really happening. Mm-hmm. And your phrase, look to the past to prepare for the future. Like getting back to the roots of where we came from is going to be so vital going forward.
Yeah, and I just want to dig into that topic a little bit right now, but I will refrain. Let's try and, I guess, stay on the agenda.
Stay on task. Stay on target.
Agenda 2030. And this is, something that we wanted to talk about fairly briefly. I mean, we only give, 45 minutes or so into these podcasts, but we want you to know that we're aware of it. We are focused on a number of these. We should be focused probably on all of them because they all are nefarious. Just may not necessarily look so on the surface. So we want to point those things out a little bit today. Maybe get your brain thinking a little bit. If you're not already, you should be aware of Agenda 2030. First of all, Agenda 21, and what the goals they've set for themselves as the UN, the WEF, the major unelected powers of the globe, and just kind of call them out, bring them to your attention instead of. And I know in general, humanity has a positive outlook on life, right? We're all looking. I try to look at things through rose-colored glasses, right? And so if you're looking at these 17 goals through rose-colored glasses, yeah, they'll all look pretty good, but they really aren't. And it's not something like the Matrix. I can't necessarily show them to you myself. You have to see them for yourself. You have to understand the motivation behind them and realize they're probably not what they say they are. Their intentions are not pure, although they say they are. So there's a brief intro.
So we're going to back up a little further, though. I want to give some historical context to this monstrosity that has come to be. So, as a reminder, you guys, this podcast is dropping the week before Thanksgiving or the week of Thanksgiving. We want to let you guys know of our friends over at Survival Frog. They have a lot of really cool survival gear, and if you use the code PrepperTalk10, the number 10, you're going to get 10% off. But guess what? They're stacking discounts this week. They take advantage of the Black Friday sales. This is a great opportunity. Go to our website also. Check out the deals there from all the different companies we work with. Great time to go get a bunch of cool stuff at a great price. I love the survival meats. I love their dry bag. I've got some of their different lanterns. I've got some lights, some battery banks. I've got a whole bunch of stuff from there. Shane's got some. Paris has some. We've all bought from there. We love it. Go check it out. Survivalfrog.com. Also, use the code PrepperTalk and save 15% over to our friends amp-3.net. That's your first aid. Most people are caught. This is like caught with your pants down when you're like, everyone has the nightmare of like teaching or speaking at a big presentation and like they showed up naked or you show up naked at school. Like those dreams, those nightmares, like not having a first aid kit in my car is that equivalent.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing I always panic. I have my AMP-3 first aid kit in the driver's side door. I've got another one in the back of the car with my survival stuff. Like it's so important to have those because it's better to have it and not need it than to not have it when you desperately need it. It's life-saving devices. So go to amp-3.net, use the code PrepperTalk, save 15% over there. Happy Thanksgiving. Let's dive in. This is the vomit of where the United Nations came from.
Go for it.
So prior to the United Nations, there was this group called the I hate this. The League of Countries. The League of Nations. Sorry. Yeah. The League of Nations. I've got so many notes. I've got to flip back. So the League of Nations basically were created January 1920 through the Paris Peace Conference. And it was proposed by President Woodrow Wilson, who got the Nobel Peace Prize for this garbage. And it was designed to basically be a policing system for the world. That's what it is. Like, yeah, they had agendas. They had other ideas that were part of it. But it was a proposal to basically say, here's how we're going to enforce peace. Not create peace, but enforce peace. As soon as you put the word enforce, it's involuntary for everyone else, right? So it didn't work with obvious reasons. The number one reason, they didn't have a police force. They were counting on the countries that were members to enforce it on their neighbors. It's basically that's the origin of the neighbor Karen's issues, right? We've all got the neighbor who, and I apologize for everyone named Karen that gets this. You're probably a wonderful person, but like the nosy neighbor is always in your business and always policing you. I've got one, we call him the water Nazi. He'll come and turn your water off if your sprinklers are going too long. Like, I kid you not, it's the weirdest thing. Sweetest guy. It's crazy.
We do live in the second driest state in the nation. So
yeah. But it's like we've got water restrictions and we meet those water restrictions and he'll still come turn your water off because it's annoying to him. No, you're going too long. That's what the League of Nations was. And it fell apart. But here's the craziest thing. We had, after the League of Nations was created, we had World War II. And then towards the end of World War II, they met and started creating the United Nations. And that was founded by 50 nations. They met in San Francisco, California. Their first meeting was April 1945 to June 1945. And they created the United Nations. And then the next year, they disbanded the League of Nations and took over the same office space in the same building in Geneva, Switzerland. So they just changed the name. That's all it really was. It was a rebranding. We're no longer a league. Now we're united. Vomit, garbage, right? And then in this new iteration, they created a peacekeeping force, so their own police and military. And in that, they were able to say, okay, now we can punish countries who are violating the agreement. And countries have to pay money to be part of it. They also have to provide resources. If you can't pay money, you have to provide more resources. So here's what's funny. How many United Nations peacekeepers are there right now? Do you know?
I don't.
There's 97,000. 97,000 peacekeepers. Majority of them are from the smallest countries like Bangladesh.
Yeah, more impoverished countries.
India has a bunch, but it's like impoverished places that won't put as much money into the pocket of the UN. So they put people. They volunteer people. So some people like United Nations. I don't know why. A lot of us don't like them. I understand completely why. But it basically was created, and they're like, hey, we're going to set up rules. We're going to have an agenda. And instead of like a business where it sets up a 5-year plan, they set up 15-year plans. Well, since 2015, the 15-year plan is Agenda 2030. They had an overlap with Agenda 21, but Agenda 2030 is kind of their big push right now. And the big things we want to point out on that, I'll read off the titles of the 17 points. Number one.
Well, I guess before we get into that, let's just point everyone over to the John Birch Society, jbs.org, to learn more about actually getting us out of the United Nations. I think they're a really sound organization that I support. So,
100%.
So you can learn a lot more there.
Constitutions right here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great organization. And then I guess to chime in a few other things about the UN. Well, maybe they'll get us down a little too deep down the rabbit hole. But look what we see happening right now is the reason why war is happening with Ukraine and Russia. Back several decades ago, basically it was promised that the UN would not encroach any further toward Russia, and it's done nothing but that. And if it were truly a peacekeeping organization, it would not be pushing for war, and that's exactly what's happening. Of course, that's a whole nother conversation, but just wanted to throw that out there. That's what's currently, one of the big topics happening right now in our world with the UN, and goes much further, much deeper. But yes, let's get into these 17 agendas of the goals of the Agenda 2030. And there are also other goals like Agenda 2025, which has other sustainable development goals to accomplish as kind of midway point into that Agenda 2030. And there's other arguments that they have also sped up this agenda as well that we could talk about.
So let's go back a second. You were saying that Russia, the whole Ukraine thing, part of it is Russia versus NATO or versus United Nations.
Well, basically? UN, NATO. When we talk about UN, NATO, I think it's all kind of intertwined. They're all buddy. They're all kind of working together. So it is NATO, right? And it is a different. They are different forces.
It's like a subgroup. It's like the cool kid clique in high school, right?
They're all the same. They're all in world. Yeah. The WEF. I'm blanking on that.
World Economic Forum.
World Economic Forum with Klaus Schwab and so forth. They're all working on, this is all their same agenda. These are all intertwined. They're all the same. They're different organizations working together. And they have 179 countries signed on to this Agenda 2030 in 1992. Yeah. That's your country and my country as well. And this treaties are, these types of agreements are not allowed under constitutional law. They're not allowed. And so they're illegal, and so they're not enforceable. And these are made by people or who have not been elected, who have been appointed. And again, a whole nother rabbit hole right there. So let's get into the 17 goals and discuss just, I think, the more appropriate ones that apply to maybe preparedness in general. and what they mean, what the objectives are, and how you and I can prepare to confront or to counter these in our own lives. Because honestly, there's really nothing I can do on the world stage to make any difference other than to bring to light the lies and the deception and the truth of these goals.
Absolutely. So their initiatives they want no poverty, and it sounds good, but then when you read into the underheadings of each of these, like, it's not no poverty, it's take away from one group to give to another group.
Correct. Yeah.
It's theft.
It's wealth distribution. That is their first goal, is no poverty. And that sounds great. And obviously that is something that Christ taught, right? And so obviously that draws in a lot of people into, yeah, I want there to be no poverty. Why don't you take care of that? And I'll sit back and live my own life, right? That's not what Christ taught. Christ taught for us to take that on individually, not as a collective. And that's 100%. What all of these goals are. It's about the collective. It leaves the individual helpless, essentially.
It's by volunteer, like it's voluntary, right?
Exactly.
Choose to volunteer your time, efforts, and anything God blesses you with to help other people,
or choose not to. Or it's entirely up to you, and that's the point.
Or the other way, the way the UN and the way our political governments are using it, let's at gunpoint or threat of jail time take from you and give it to someone who didn't work for it, right?
Well, essentially, that's how our government works right now, right? If you don't pay your taxes, what happens? In the end, you eventually end up going to jail, getting taken there by men with guns, imposing their will upon you because it's law. You know, suppose, again, another rabbit hole to go chasing down, but essentially it's not an option to 100%. Not pay your taxes. And that's wrong. That's theft.
Yeah, that's 100% theft. So the next one is zero hunger, right? Again, sounds good, but this gets pretty dicey, so we're not going to jump into it. Number 3 is good health and well-being. Also sounds good, but they are pushing vaccine mandates. They are pushing, health mandates. They're enforcing. It's again another level of slavery. Every one of these is locked into a slavery control. You will own nothing and be happy, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like a puzzle. You have to look at all the clues that you're seeing, all the information that they're giving us, that they're feeding us. Like, for example, what have we seen as a way that they're proposing to end world hunger? Eating bug proteins, right? Eating bugs, taking away the good foods, the meat and dairy and eggs and those things that are actually good for our health, and giving us processed foods as a way to solve hunger problems.
Right. It's absolutely disgusting. It's if you look at the processed foods and the health complications, it then leads into the next thing, which is the good health and well-being, right? Exactly. Well, now you can have all these medications to help combat the food that we're forcing on you, right?
Well, how well does our healthcare system work right now?
Yeah. Well, then it goes to number 4, which is quality education. I read an interesting book a few years ago called The Dumbing Down of America, and it shows how the Industrial Revolution is really what led a lot of the changes in our educational system, and that since the implementation of the Department of Education, our quality of education, our ability for critical thinking, right? Why do we get educated? So that we can learn how to critically think and solve problems better. It has gone down. We went from like top 3 in the world in educational quality to number 57.
Well, that's because they're training, good workers. That's all they're trying to get is people to repeat what they're told, memorize, and be good workers.
Yeah, whereas memorization, no critical thinking, only do what we tell you to do, right?
And where does this quality education curriculum come from? I mean, who's the one developing this? It is known that the history is written by the victors.
Yep.
And the more I learn, and I'm sure many of you are on the same page as me, the more I learn, the more I realize that what I've been taught my entire career in education is untrue. From just your basic history, things from Christopher Columbus to all the way, to the early 70s when I was born. I mean, anyway, again, another rabbit hole. I'll stop saying that. But yeah, absolutely. Quality education should begin in the home. It should stay in the home.
Yep.
And in my opinion, that's my opinion. There are some benefits of public schools. I can only think of a few, but that is entirely personal and up to you. But has been used as a tool to deceive and to enslave. And I'll end that there. Yeah.
So we're going to bust through just a few topic heads, and then we're going to go into the stuff we really want to talk about. But like number 5 is gender equality. Number 6 is clean water and sanitation. Sounds good. Number 7, affordable and clean energy. Also sounds good, but there's caveats. 8, decent work. Decent work? Really?
Let's pause there on 7 for a second. You know, we talk a lot about in preparedness about self-reliance, creating our own energy sources through solar, wind power, and so forth, which is great. I think that makes a lot of sense for off-grid, for living simply. But the green agenda is being pushed on us, and coal plants are going away. So-called fossil fuels, which there's no such thing, are being eliminated when it is the most cost-effective fuel there is. And again, another
let's go back to oil for a second. The most cost-effective, but also we were like as a people, we were whaling like certain species of whales to extinction, right? We were doing this. We drove so many different animals to extinction just so we could create light, just so we could create energy sources. And since the understanding and use of quote fossil fuels, crude oil, and the refining of it to all these different uses, now it's like we have electricity, we have oils and balms and all these other things that you can use, and the whales are like all the animals that could have been left alone can now thrive, right? Those that survived that. But it's like we have a much better society and quality of life for everybody by utilizing those resources and using them wisely. I think the problem we have is there are ruling class elites who control those, and they manipulate it so that we have to pay a ton of money. They make a ton of money and we get less of it. And then they create agendas like this to further control and monopolize and put it into the hands of the governments instead of the hands of the public.
And we see with the green agenda as well as electrification of everything, right? Electric cars and so forth, which is very obvious now does not work. The lifespan of wind turbines is extremely short. They're very high maintenance. They're not efficient. Neither are solar panels. They are great, but they cannot produce the energy that is needed to live the lifestyle that most people want nowadays. I am all for living a more simple lifestyle. We don't need to live on nearly as much power as we do now, but that should be our choice again. If these green energy things are implemented, if I can speak here, are implemented, then we will be forced to be compelled to live on a lower standard of quality of life because we have less energy. Yet they are compelling us to move toward electrification with making gas vehicles illegal by 2030. That's part of the agenda.
So what's funny though is they're saying to people who can afford a vehicle, I want you to have less of that vehicle, but I want you to pay more for it so that we can take people who are impoverished, who don't have a vehicle or who don't have electricity, and we're going to give all the money and resources to them, right? But then they're also going to hurt us with Agenda 13 or Item 13, which is climate action. If you're using any of the fossil fuels, any of the things that have actually improved our world, you're going to be penalized. But if you start switching over to green initiatives, they're going to give you part of this $26 trillion U.S. value, $26 trillion of green benefits and initiatives. Well, I looked into that. That $26 trillion is an estimate by a think tank. There's no real money behind it. It's perceived savings and perceived earnings. There's no data to back it up that says people will be given this much money. However, governments are giving tax rebates to businesses, incentivization to go green. Well, what does that mean? Cutting carbon usage, switching to solar panels. I mean, and I think solar panel, there's some wonderful assets behind it or wonderful uses. It's not the solution.
No, it is not.
It is one of the more expensive ways. Wind turbine is, I think, the worst, most expensive. Commercial wind turbines are the most expensive, least effective, just garbage way to funnel money from government pockets to specified interest, special interest groups, and the money goes in circles through them, but doesn't help or touch Tom, Dick, or Harry, the normal people of life.
Yeah, and keep in mind that all of these projects, or majority of these projects, have to be subsidized by the government, which is subsidized by the taxpayer. And then the taxpayer has to pay more for the green energy resources. And so it's all about the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer is what it is. And that's what all these goals are for. They're about control. They're about a totalitarian state. It's about inventorying everything that exists and controlling it to as much as they possibly can. And so, everything we try to teach as preppers, I'll use that term, or preparers, is self-reliance and being less reliant on these systems, because they will get more and more invasive. And for example, going back to water really quickly, if you have your own well, yes, they will attempt to regulate that as well. They are trying in many states to regulate private wells, private water. They are regulating rainwater collection and so forth, claiming that the certain states own all the water that falls from the sky. And so,
isn't that crazy?
The more it's insane. And the more resilient we can become individually, as a family, as individuals, and communities, the better we can withstand these development goals. I think they're doomed to failure, but in the meantime, they're going to make it really difficult for us.
100% agree with that. So that's the affordable and clean energy problem. Then they say that they want decent work and economic growth, but you have to meet certain factors and criteria to be classified in that.
Exactly.
Right? And what's funny is they have incentivized this, and then they've attached banking to it, which then goes into the whole world of CDBCs, which is the digital dollar being replaced with a global digital dollar that they can control. And we'll dive into that a little bit later, but then that also then connects to number 9, which is industry, innovation, and infrastructure, right? 15-minute cities, smart cities is what they call them. Oh yeah, it's smart, it's better.
And the point of this is, who is it that decides decent work? What does that mean? Who decides that? Who determines that? And it's not you and me. I guarantee you that.
They want to also, number 10, reduce inequalities. And what's funny about that is it's not about where you live, how you live. It's not about the poverty line at all in this one. Number 10 is all about the LGBTQ initiatives, right? They're marginalizing the rest of the world to put an emphasis on one underserved group, as they claim. Number 10, to me, we're not going to go into that tonight because there's too much to unpack. Number 11, sustainable cities and communities. That connects back to infrastructure. Number 9, which is
the 15-minute cities and so forth.
12 is responsible consumption and production, like only using what you need and then donating the rest. Sounds great.
Again, who is it that determines that? I mean, who is it that sets those standards? If you read through these goals and such, they're very vague, they're very non-specific, very vapid, and so it leaves room for their own interpretation. They can set whatever standards they feel they want.
And remember, these are unelected individuals, think tank groups, right? They have their own army, they call them the peacekeepers, to enforce their rule of law that you never voted for or agreed to be part of. It's like all of a sudden someone moves in and turns your neighborhood into an HOA without your neighborhood agreeing to it, and now saying everyone has to paint their house green and everyone has to mow their lawn on Sunday only, and you can only water it on Tuesdays, and trash day is now on Wednesdays if your house ends in a 3, Friday if it ends in a 5. Like it's the absurdity, insanity of all of that. And you have to now pay us for all of these services in addition to what you're already paying. They also get number 13 is climate action. Number 14 is life below water. 15 is life on land. Like who names these things? It's ridiculous.
And what they're doing with these, life below water and on land, is they are putting Mother Earth, which is important, right? It's important to be responsible, and wildlife as higher valued, more valuable than human life.
Yes.
Right. We know by the gospel, by the scriptures, that everything on earth is for use by man. And of course, we are to be responsible for it and with it. Absolutely. And to treat animals kindly. I mean, that is all part of it. It has been throughout, biblical history. They are putting a higher value on that than human life is what this comes down to.
So then we jump into number 16, which is peace, which it's peace, justice, and strong institutions. Well, whose peace is it and whose justice is it? It's their own justice subcommittee, their own courts, their own international courts they've created. So
a new world government, is that what you're...
A new world government, a new world justice department.
Order.
They're police, peacekeepers, and they classify all of these institutions and fund it from our dollar that our governments are donating. I'm going to air quote that, are committing to this organization. And then the last one is partnerships for the goals. If you agree to all these terms and you show your efforts towards it, you get benefits. And they will give you contracts, and they will coordinate benefiting companies, countries, and institutions if you're showing progress in adopting these initiatives.
These benefits are reserved for the VIPs, right? The very important person. And what is it that separates the VIP from the regular person? It's the dollar. It's currency. I would say it's money. Money is gold and silver is money. So I try not to use that term, but it is your wealth, as in numbers on a screen, that determines whether you're VIP or not. Unfortunately, and that's really what it comes down to in all aspects of entertainment, to getting perks with the government and other institutions and such.
Well, it's like it goes deeper into finance, understanding where the banking is going to come from in the future with the CDBCs, how they're going to use that to help influence elections, influence emerging countries, influence companies. Here's my favorite: improve the development of, transfer the wealth of, eliminate the dissemination of or diffusion of false technologies, promote environmentally sound technologies, and to help developing countries on favorable terms. Based on what are these terms? They don't ever
very vague. And the thing that really bothers me the most is that the UN itself is claiming management rights for all this. They're just claiming it out of the air. These groups and people and government only have the power that and the influence that we give them. They only have the authority that we give them. And I personally am not giving them anything. And that is done by our actions, how we spend our money, and so on and so forth. But if we do not comply, they have no power. And then it is guaranteed that they will exploit every good, potentially good aspect of these goals will be exploited. I mean, that's what happens in government. Corruption happens in every aspect of government. How does the saying go? Is that corruption? And of course, I'm slaughtering it here as well. I won't even go any further because I forget the quote. But corruption is rampant, and that's where everything goes to more and more corruption, and it will be exploited.
Yeah. And all of this is a manipulation. All of this is a control tactic designed to, as they say, on their founding, to govern through victory, democracy, and peace.
Democracy. You know what democracy is? It's two lambs and a wolf deciding what's for dinner.
Flip it.
That is what two wolves and a lamb. Yes, thank you. Not thinking clearly. Two wolves and a lamb deciding what's for dinner. Yeah, thank you for editing that. But it is also about eliminating sovereignty, personal sovereignty, sovereign, if I can say it,
personal
sovereignty
and state
sovereignty. Yeah, absolutely. It's
right?
about eliminating nation states and eliminating borders.
So that they have control of who gets what resources, who gets what, where they can live. They can decide where you live, how you live, who you live with, who your neighbors are, what you drive, what access you have on the internet, what
Well,
access you have on television.
sounds like communism.
It's absolutely socialist, communist garbage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's and it's laughable. I mean, if you look at this, I believe points 13, let's see, climate action. Penalties for not going green, benefits for going green. And some of the things that they talk about is like sea levels have risen about 20 centimeters, 8 inches since 1880. 8 inches.
If that.
Well, I'm looking at, you can Google this. This is funny. Look at Plymouth Rock.
Exactly.
Early images of Plymouth Rock versus now. Water level's the same.
Identical. Yep.
I used to live in Florida, right on the coastline for a long time. Water level, I'm wondering where are they getting this 8 inches? What place are they measuring this? Are they measuring this all over the world? But they're saying that by 2100, it'll rise 1 to 4 feet. Well, here's my take on this. This is my bullcrap meter. In the 1970s, the whole world was in panic, thanks to the United States, of going into a new ice age. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
We were on the tail end of that. Like we were born during that. But everyone's afraid that we're going into this ice age. Everything's freezing. It's getting too cold. And now they're saying it's getting too hot.
Mm-hmm. It's all BS.
Exactly. And only their scientists are allowed to discuss this. Anyone outside of the circles or those groups of scientists that they've deemed eligible to talk about this are discredited. Their degrees are taken away from them. Their platforms are taken away from them. They're defunded and they're delegitimized.
Mm-hmm. It's all about the dollar. It's all about money.
Oh, it's
very frustrating. It burns me up.
And they met recently in New York to try to eliminate more of our rights and freedoms, but also in an attempt to speed up Agenda 2030.
Mm-hmm.
That happened a little over a couple months ago, I believe.
Actually, no. What I show is September of 23. They signed a memorandum of understanding to mark the beginning of a new phase of accelerated process, and there have been a lot of I want to say, I don't want to use the word conspiracy theorist because conspiracy truths. There's a report called the Deagle Report. It's a military website that showed, and it's no longer on the military website, but it's been shared and there's plenty of information on this out there. The Deagle Report showed that the U.S. population by the year 2025 would decrease by 70%. But other countries like China, Russia, India, and their populations would basically maintain. So a lot of other people have been putting these 1 and 1 together equals 2, in that the speeding up of this, potentially of the Agenda 2030 to Agenda 2025 being a possibility as part of the speeding up. And so I think that's where a lot of these talking points come from, to where it's now Agenda 2025 instead of Agenda 2030. So again, another rabbit hole we could go down.
And honestly, I don't think they could push it fast enough to make that happen. I mean, we've seen during
I agree.
Biden's presidential run, his term, a lot go real fast in degrading society and removing freedoms. I mean, patriots were put on the watch list by the FBI. Mm-hmm. If you're a patriot, you're on a watch list, right? It just blows my mind. I believe it was Tulsi Gabbard was put on a watch list, a flight watch list. I have to do some research on this and we'll get back to you guys, but because they decided they didn't like what she was voting for, or they didn't like something she said, and so they're like, "Oh, you're on a no-fly list now. You're on a terror list now," right? I remember when I created PrepperCon, I got randomly selected for the next few years every time I went on a flight for additional screening. Randomly selected on every flight. there, wherever I was going, and back every single flight for the next 3 years. How could that be random?
Mm-hmm.
Right? My name was on the masthead. My name was on the registration documentation. I obviously hit a list. I hit a nerve. And there are some of you listening to this that are like, oh yeah, I've experienced that. I get randomly selected a lot. Look at it. How often do you get randomly selected for things? You're probably on a watch list. We're probably on one just for doing this podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
But don't let that stop you from doing what's right. Don't let that stop you from being personally responsible for your future. That's the whole point of this episode, is really to talk about your personal responsibility. Know what's going on in the world, know what's going on by these unelected groups, and become ungovernable. Become independent, become sovereign. Take care of your family, take care of your needs, and leave it up to you. And that's what we're going to really dig deeper in our next episode is your responsibility going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess my last parting words would be, to my knowledge, in these documents, there is nowhere where it mentions anything about God or family.
100%.
There is, and again, I will fully confess, I have not read everything. I do not desire to. I'm not going to, but I have not seen anything about where it refers to personal responsibility, family, or God. And that, as we know, it is God, family, community. That's where we stand. That's where I stand.
100%. And it's funny because they focus on the global citizen.
Mm-hmm. Be a good global citizen.
And whoever that is, we don't know, because they don't ever seem to get the money or the resources.
Good point. Yeah.
So guys, thank you for tuning in tonight, or today, or this morning, or this afternoon. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for tuning in and not tuning out. You've been listening to Prepper Talk Radio. This is radio for the ready-minded. And if you're as concerned about these things as we are, the challenge is go to our website, preppertalkradio.com. Get involved. Look at our resources page, download our food storage calculator and our preparedness guides. We've got quite a few things on there that are free to help you get better prepared. Check out our book, Ready Radius. You can get it on Amazon right now. We're going to be doing a flash sale here pretty soon on it. You can get it on the website. But here's the thing. It completely prioritizes how you prepare. Focusing on first things first, doing it in radius circles, right? From in to out. Understanding that you have a lot more control in your preparedness and in your life than you realize. And it's been a phenomenal thing to write. We did it over a period of years and we finally got it published. And we wanted to do it so that you, as a person who's trying to be more prepared, more independent, more ready-minded, do it in a way that makes it easy and clear. Make sure you go get that book. Make sure you join our group, Emergency Prep and Self-Reliance, and make sure you keep the head on a swivel and that thought process fresh and clear every day. Take time to get grounded and get close to God, because he's got your back. Catch you guys on the next episode.
See you next week.